Ladies and gentlemen, brand mascots are back. With the rise of AI, the opportunity for brands to start creating their own breathing, living, and dancing characters is there for the taking. In this video, I'll show you how you can create a brand mascot for your brand from scratch using AI tools. We'll look at ideation, creation, turning it into video, 3D, and a lot more. But most of all, how you can create a unique, distinctive, and consistent character for your brand. So buckle up and let's talk branding. Now, of course, you might be wondering, why would I invest in the mascot in the first place? It's like super cringe stuff. Well, actually, brand mascots have been proven to be one of the most effective assets you can have as a brand in your marketing toolkit. But why do most brands don't have a brand mascot today? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, a lot of people think it's just childish, not fitting their brand. But there's another reason. It's very hard to create and to maintain. You need to hire some kind of 3D artist or an illustrator to create one. You need to have the ID. And then once it's done and it's looking great, you still need to find ways to use it in multiple situations in different contexts. Basically, you have to keep paying those artists to come up with new contexts, which I fully support. But for a lot of small brands, that is not possible until today. So let's start creating our own brand mascot. For the sake of this tutorial, I'll actually do a brand mascot for the Let's Talk Branding brand, very meta, because I'm at this point working at a brand refresh, which you can see here. And one of the things I wanted to add to be more distinctive was a brand mascot. So we're doing this live, and this is the actual mascot I'm going to use in my brand. So there are 3 steps to developing a mascot. There is the ideation part, there's the creation part, and then there's the expansion part with a little bit of protection on the side. For ideation, the most important part is just what we always do: start with the strategy. What is your brand personality? What makes your brand unique? How do your competitors look like, and how can you make sure you stand out? So take a step back, look at the brand, and try to understand what the essence of it is, and that will already give you ideas. Then, of course, you can also look for inspiration, look for books, look on Pinterest, look on Behance, look or wherever you'll find mascots. Look at mascots you remember from your childhood, and look at which of those have the right personality and are also distinct enough from competitors. One thing you can already start doing here is we can already start using some AI to just basically help us ideate. For example, in Midjourney, you can use the tune feature, which will give you a bunch of different looks, which can already inspire you again, like in what terms of look you want. So basically, what you're trying to do at this point in this ideation phase is just to gather ideas, inspiration, go as broad as you can, and then start honing in on what you think will work for your brand. So there's a few like fundamentals to a good mascot that any mascot should have. The first one is it should be ownable. So basically, let's say you're selling, I know what, jeans, and your mascot is a running jeans, and it doesn't have any specific standing out elements. It's gonna be very hard to protect because basically anyone can easily copy that, and it's also legally unprotectable. But we'll talk about legal aspect later because it's a tricky one in the AI space. The other one is some kind of human traits, because like what we basically want is we want people seeing our mascot to mm, like emotionally connect to it, and that what we do in that space is what we call
Anthropomorphism.
oh dang, that's a hard word, which is basically where we see humanistic traits in objects or animals. But we want to, of course, enable that by simple things like facial elements like eyes and the nose and the mouth, but could be other things. Then exaggeration is also very important. You want to emphasize certain elements of it. Maybe it has huge legs, maybe it has a long nose, maybe it has neon hair, whatever it is. Again, you want it to be distinctive, so you can't just say our mascot is gonna be an owl. and it's just an owl. It needs something specific. So in that space, you can already also think about things like accessories, things that it can wear or look like or have a special style or whatever it is. Again, the point is stand out. That's why you have a mascot in the first place. Um, legs, well, physically not always doesn't need legs, but it's more about does it have legs to do a lot of stuff with it. Think about that in advance. A good mascot always has that. And then it needs to fit your brand's personality, of course, as we mentioned, and it needs to be this distinctive from the competitors. If your main competitor or the big competitor in your space is rocking a pink chicken with a yellow head, well, stay away from chickens to begin with. There's plenty of species to to choose from. Um, so once you've like gotten an idea based on the exploration in terms of what you want, based on your brand, based on your research, based on these fundamentals we know, you will start to define basically the ID for your mascot. So define what type of character you want. Do you want it to be an animal, some kind of human or humanistic mascot? Do you want it to be an object? Whatever. What will its personality be? Of course, this is based on the brand personality, but it can have its own character. It can play its own unique role within the brand. And then those unique, distinctive elements that it will have. So if you choose, so if you choose the owl, will it have, I don't know, red shoes, or will it be like, will it have huge legs? Whatever it will be that make it stand out from just a generic owl is important to already have in mind. And then how will it come to life? The legs part. Will it dance? Will it interact with humans? Like, what are some things when you think about your brand, the touch points, the context, the communication that it will need to do for sure, or the opportunities there? Having that in mind up front is already a great starting point. So a lot to take in, but I'm just going to give you my example of what I came up with. So I thought a pigeon could be really cool for the Let's Talk brand, because one, symbolically, I like the idea of like a pigeon is a very let's say gray, bland kind of animal. There's a lot of pigeons, they look the same, but basically what I'm trying to prove is if you make that pigeon distinct by giving it certain accessories or exaggerations, it will be ownable. And that's, I think, also the metaphor here for a brand is maybe just by adding a mascot to your whole identity, you can already stand out while still being somewhat of a pigeon. So pigeon symbolically, there's a metaphor in there. I also like it in terms of personality. I think these pigeons kind of like a casual, funny animal, which I like that low key approach. And then visually, I think it's also an interesting animal because it's small and it can join me on adventures, and it won't like over dominate me because my own face is very prominent in the Let's Talk branding brand. It's kind of like a personal brand, so I don't want them to clash too much. So I already think about that as well. So at the end of the day, you might think, well, Steph, okay, pigeon feels a bit random. And actually, that is a bit of the point here as well. Like creating a mascot in the beginning might feel a bit like a creative leap where will people understand why you chose the pigeon and stuff. But in reality, if you look at a lot of mascots, it's not like there is always a super logical explanation to it. It's more that you build that relationship over time. People see that creature, they link it to your brand, the creature is entertaining, it builds a relationship, and so on. So I'd say like find something where you feel comfortable with, but also don't overthink it. It's really about building the link over time, and people won't be asking all the time what your mascot is about. We see the same with logos and names. They don't always make sense. Apple for computers, McDonald's for burgers, like really. But at the end of the day, people aren't asking questions, and in hindsight, it always makes sense. So just, I would say, go for it. So for my pigeon, just the final touch here is, of course, okay, we like the animal in terms of that the type of character we want, but what I said earlier, we need something distinctive. And what I think could be really cool is this kind of like bit skater hipster vibe. I'm also like a skateboarder myself, so again, it's a personal touch, and I want it to be like this wool hat that is Bordeaux. Actually, I should just wear one, right? Something like this, basically. Um, so I think that will add some panache to our little pigeon, which is what we want. So let's dive into step two. Enough with the theory already and the ideation. Let's just dive in. But hold on, we need to talk tools first, just a little bit. There's a bunch of tools out there, and this space is going so fast that every day there's probably new tools and features coming out. But the main tools I wanted to just quickly shine a light on, there's Midjourney, which is great for cinematic, artistic imagery. It looks amazing, it looks very realistic, it looks very well cinematic again. What it's not so good at is very detailed prompting. So if you ask it something specific, like a pigeon with a Bordeaux or magenta wool hat, it might do something, pick up on the words, but do it differently. So it doesn't always understand the details well, which is, of course, very important if you want to create a character in a specific way. And it's also not great at consistency. I haven't found the right way to consistently prompt it to do a similar character. So it's great for imagery, anything, but for mascots, not the best. Then there's Dall-E, the new one, Dall-E 3, which is integrated into ChatGPT. If you have a Plus account, it's amazing because you can basically have a conversation with ChatGPT and it will create images on the fly, which is at this point my favorite way of doing it. What is also amazing about this new Dall-E version is exactly the what Midjourney was lacking in terms of being able to generate images with very detailed things like give it red shoes, put it in on the Eiffel Tower, give it a whatever. You can iterate on it and details, and it will do it amazingly well. And then consistency is also what I've been finding really, really good. If you are able to prompt it properly, which we'll get into, it's really able to keep a consistent character, which is amazing because that's exactly what we want. And then there's a bunch of other tools that are really interesting, like Stable Diffusion, if you want to tweak a lot more, if you want to train a model based on existing mascots. There's an upcoming video about that as well. There's Leonardo, there's a bunch of tools out there. And I'd say, like, don't be limited to the tool I'm using today. I've created beautiful mascots with Midjourney as well and with Stable Diffusion. So again, like, it's just the tools, but for the sake of a mascot creation, let's run with Dall-E. So basically, you just start with a basic prompt. I want this kind of mascot for my brand. And you can already just start testing what it will prompt out of the gates. You don't even need to give it a lot of context. Again, that's why I think Dall-E is quite impressive in that way. And after a few iterations, of course, you add also the distinctive element like the wool hat. You start fine tuning, and once you'll get a look that you think is like on point and you feel this is the character you want, it's the right style, it's the right pose, it's the right face, all these things, then it's really a matter of looking whether it will fit with your brand identity. At this point, you have a prototype of your brand mascot. So what I'm doing here is just testing it with the fresh identity I did for, or I'm creating for Let's Talk Branding. And you can see what I really like is how the colors are matching, but there is still enough contrast between the mascot and the identity. So this is clicking very well for me. And what you can see is I also asked GPT to do some different angles of the same character, just to give an idea of like what will the base mascot look like from different angles on a very just clean background, so just so you can focus on the mascot. Amazing. So before we get into the actual expansion part of bringing it to life with video and 3D and in different contexts, I just wanted to give you this one example from a good friend, Haris Spahic, who actually developed his own mascot with also Dall-E. And I think it's a fascinating story, and the way he's using it on LinkedIn is amazing. So enjoy.
Hey everybody, today I'm gonna show you how to recreate my mascot called Calvin Cooks using AI image generation tools. It doesn't matter which tool you use, you can use Midjourney, you can use Bing, whatever. The principles that I'm about to cover stay the same. But that said, I do use Bing AI Image Generator as my tool of choice. And another thing I want to say before we start is I want you to be very mindful of being specific when you prompt these things. And why do I say that? I say it because if your goal is to recreate something as accurately as possible, you cannot afford to be generic, because if you use a generic prompt, like whatever, for example, purple chef monster, you're probably going to get something very generic, something random, something that looks nothing like this. How can you be specific? And that's the first step I'm going to do in this process, is I want to narrow down these specific traits about my mascot Calvin Cooks that will help me craft a better prompt, which should hopefully get me more accurate result closer to what I really want to recreate. So let's zoom into this guy here, and let's start by singling out these specific things about him. Well, we can start with the obvious thing is he's a monster. So that's the number one thing. He's a monster, and that will be the first keyword we use in our prompt. The second thing is he's very fluffy, as you can see. So very fluffy is another keyword we'll use. Third thing is he is very purple slash magenta, so that will be the keyword. The fourth thing is maybe you can notice how he has these, short legs and short arms. So we're going to use short legs and short arms as a part of our prompt as well. The next thing is you can notice he has these, narrow set eyes. So narrow set eyes is another keyword and another thing that makes Calvin Cooks who he is. And the next thing is he has this little, evil looking, but at the same time kind of friendly, goofy looking smile. So I tend to use a keyword friendly looking toothy smile. So that will be a keyword for the prompt. The next thing is his overall vibe, like this whole art style, is very Disney Pixar-esque. So I tend to use Pixar art style as another part of this prompt. And last but not least, his most iconic trait. I mean, I can't say iconic, I'm not that arrogant. I'm gonna say his defining trait is his chef hat. That's where he got his name from. He wouldn't cook anything if he weren't a chef. He's Calvin Cooks for a reason. So I'm gonna use this keyword wearing a chef hat. So now we have these parts, these specific things about Calvin Cooks that we can use to inform the prompt we want to use to recreate him as he appears on my website. And now we're going to see the results of my very generic prompt. I doubt we'll get any good results, but let's see. Yeah, this is pretty shit. That's pretty shit. Looks nothing like my Calvin Cooks mascot. The top left one is the closest one, but it's still nowhere near, as you can see. So I'm gonna have to try again and be very more specific and very more descriptive. So let me try a different prompt, but this time I'll use the keywords I outlined in the beginning of this video. Here we go. As you can see, this time around, I'm not being generic, I'm being very descriptive with my prompt. I used all the keywords that we covered at the start of this video, and just to add a bit of character to this image, I also told Bing AI to make the background a white office whiteboard. We're getting close, but still not there yet. And at this point, I think it's all about details. Obviously, you can see the AI clearly understands what I'm shooting for here, but these details are still missing. As you can see, one of the versions even has horns, others are a darker shade of purple, they have messed up teeth, so these are the details I'm talking about. What I want to do is I want to get a version that looks around 90% accurate to the way Calvin Cooks looks on my website. And the only way I'm going to do that is I'm going to keep repeating this exact same prompt until I get it right. It's going to take me a couple of hours. It's very inefficient, I know, but that's the process I use. So I'm going to keep prompting this. I'm going to skip the video ahead until I get a result that I like. So see you on the flip side. And here I am, guys, 2 hours later, and God knows how many prompts later, I finally have something to work with. I think the one on the top left is decent. Also the one on the bottom right. I'm going to go with the top left one. As you can see, he looks kind of close, very close to Calvin Cooks on my website, but there are still some glaring details. The good news is these are details I can fix in Photoshop. Like he has messed up teeth, okay, I can fix that. He has weird eyes, okay, I can fix that as well. And the third thing, his color of his fur is very dark. I can also fix that in Photoshop. So I'm gonna go with this one. I'm gonna run it through Photoshop, and then I'm gonna show you the final version of my recreated Calvin Cooks mascot. And here it is. This is the final version of my recreated Calvin Cooks mascot. As you can see, I fixed his fur. I made his fur a lot brighter. I fixed his teeth and I made his eyes a lot more tighter together. I think this looks decent. I think it looks probably around that 90% accuracy mark. I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. And if I want, as I always do, I can also add my tag on it. This is just slap a text on it This is how this looks like, and this is usually the format I use in my LinkedIn posts. So this is it. This is my process. I know it's very inefficient. I don't advocate for it. I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. I'm saying this is how I do it. If you want to follow along, please be my guest. There are no secrets here. And yeah, this is it. Thank you for watching. Steph, thank you for having me. And I hope you found it helpful.
Voila, that was Haris' story. Go check it out on LinkedIn. I think it's Calvin Cooks is really an interesting mascot. And again, it's great to see a solopreneur leveraging these tools to tell good stories and build his brand and his business. But let's get into the third part, which is all about expanding this mascot and bringing it to life, because we have this base mascot. It looks good, but of course, if you want to use it in your marketing, you'll need to do a lot of things with it. The first thing I always want to play around with is putting the mascot in some different contexts and different images. So I'm asking Dall-E here to put our mascot in, for example, a podcast studio. Now, what's really important here is, again, to maintain that consistency, there's a few things you can do. You can ask for the gen ID of the character. So when you have your character locked in, you ask for the gen ID that will give you like a code. And whenever you refer to that code, Dall-E will know you're referring to that image and the style of image. But even then, you still sometimes have to also add in again, like, give me that pigeon with the wool hat in that style plus the gen ID. Like, it's there's no easy, it's not simple math. It's like you have to just test, and sometimes you'll have to do 5 or 10 iterations on getting it to be consistent. But what I found overall is great. But that's not enough. Okay, we got static imagery, that's really fun. We can do some poses, some cool visuals. But what about video? Well, let me tell you, Runway is really amazing at this, especially if you have this solid character. I did some tests here. You can see you can upload the image, you can play around with the motion and the different settings just to get it right. You have to do like some tweaking. You have the new motion painting features. There's a lot of ways you can use Runway, which gives you a lot of control over the video. Um, there is weird stuff happening. It's AI, for heaven's sake. But once you get like the subtle results are really nice. Like you see it's like alive and kicking, and that will add a layer, I think, of quality and getting attention to your marketing communications, which is great. So Runway, Pika Labs, play around with it, do some different tests, and hopefully you'll getting good results. And then the last part is actually 3D, which is really interesting. At this point, I don't think the quality is there yet, but with the new Gaussian splatting, it's becoming more and more like high quality. And I think at some point we'll have our like interactive posed mascot where we can do stuff with it live and it will basically be rendered, which is like the next step in terms of making it like as flexible as possible. But just wanted to show you that example. And then very important, of course, is where do we go from here? Well, there's two things basically you can do. You can start using it in your brand, basically roll it out, and play around with AI tools as much as you can to make it better every day. That's, I think, the road I'm taking with this mascot. There, the second part, what you can do is you can basically use this as a briefing towards a 3D artist or an illustrator, or depends on the style you want, and just give them the angles, the kind of character you want, and then let them run with it, because that will of course give you even more like consistency, more uniqueness. But voila, that's it. I'm super excited about how this space is evolving, and I'm really looking forward to more brands sharing their living creatures, dancing, doing stuff, making this a fun place and not a boring place. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe. If you want to learn more about brand strategy, go visit branding.courses. I'm out.